of November. It is Cyber Monday, and you're listening to Heart of America with, well, Michael Hart. That's me. And I think that everybody probably has a post-weekend hangover of sorts. Of course, we had Black Friday. We were actually on the air about an hour or so on Friday this past week. Wasn't a whole lot of news to discuss, but it's something interesting about the Thanksgiving holiday. And I don't know if it has to do with Thanksgiving necessarily, but wow, it pretty much sparked some really ignorant comments from a lot of really out there, whacked out people. We're going to get into that a little bit later on, but today is Cyber Monday, and if you're heading out to your office or your phone or wherever you happen to shop online, you might see an increase in what you pay at the cash register, as many online retailers have already begun charging sales tax, but a lot of folks have not realized that, because shoppers heading online to purchase holiday gifts will find that you're being charged sales tax in some places where you were not before. A June ruling from the Supreme Court gives states the go-ahead to require more companies to collect tax on online purchases. Now, more than 24 have moved to take advantage of the ruling, many, of course, ahead of the shopping season, which I guess semi-officially kicked off on Black Friday. Now, whether shoppers get charged sales tax on your online purchases comes down to where you live and where you're shopping. Before the Supreme Court's recent decision, the rule was that businesses selling online only had to collect taxes in states where they had stores, warehouses, or some other kind of physical presence. That meant that major retailers such as Apple, Best Buy, Target, Macy's, which have brick-and-mortar stores nationwide, were generally collecting tax before from online customers. But that was not the case for businesses with big online presence. Now, states can force out-of-state sellers to collect those taxes if they're doing a fair amount of business in the states. Think of websites such as Overstock.com, Home Goods Company, Wayfair, etc. And also, where you live can also affect whether you are being charged a sales tax. There is a whole host of states, including Sweet Home Alabama, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Maryland, Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, North Dakota, Washington, and Wisconsin, all began enforcing their own requirements for the online sales tax beginning the first day of October, and about another half dozen states will start in the next 2 months. So have fun with the online shopping today, folks, and you're seeing quite a bit of it grow. And, if what we saw over the course of the Thanksgiving weekend is, any indication of the way people are beginning to shop, because you're going to have situations, and I said this, and for those that might know this locally, there was a shooting, a officer-involved shooting at one of the largest malls in the United States, which happens to be less than 15 minutes from where I'm broadcasting. We learned over the weekend that the supposed assailant that had shot another young man and a young girl in the back was then taken down by the local Hoover Police Department, which is a suburb south of Birmingham. For those of you outside the region, the officers responded, and they got the wrong guy. And I have, for the longest period of time, been very resistant to getting anywhere near a mall, anywhere around the holiday shopping season. Now, last evening, the wife and I decided to go ahead and get our Christmas tree yesterday and put it up. And we've got a rather large tree for us, a little bit 2 or 3 feet taller than we normally do, which did require a quick trip to the big box store last evening to buy a different kind of tree stand. But outside of that, I ain't doing it. And then events such as what occurred in Hoover, Alabama, further underscores the fact that in this day and time, when you have a lot of people, some of the reports in this particular situation, some of the eyewitness reports were that other people in the mall began to draw their weapons. And we're going to do this a little bit later on in this week, where we are going to bring our good friend Dan Wass on the program And Dan and I are going to talk about, because I'm a big Second Amendment guy, but we're going to talk about what happens in a society where everybody is carrying, and then you do have these situations where there is a case of mistaken identity, and a lot of people draw their weapons. When we were back on the terrestrial signal, we also had this conversation with security in our churches. And I think it's something that really needs to be discussed because, we want to keep our Second Amendment rights, but on the flip side of it, you have these police officers. Now, I'm not saying that the guy that was shot is entirely innocent. The facts are not entirely known, but it's pretty much known that, in fact, he was not the shooter. But then again, you had other people in the mall brandishing weapons. You add in the excitement of the holidays, but, also the fatigue that seems to accompany these events. A lot of folks going out in the middle of the night to shop, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, you kind of marry that over here to the online tax story, and you begin to kind of see the demise of what is going on in our malls, our strip malls, and certainly our big box malls, like the one right here in Birmingham. So we're going to kind of keep an eye, of course, on the local story, which did make Fox News National over the weekend. But there's a lot of other things we're going to be talking about today as well. But we'll get Dan on the program sometime this week and see if we can't break this down just a little bit more to get a better feel for how people feel about this, especially during the holiday season. Also, turning our attention to California, the campfire, quote, campfire, close quotes, is now 100% contained as the very grim search by researchers continues. The campfires burned across more than 150,000 acres in California and became the deadliest blaze in state history and has been finally contained, according to officials yesterday. California fire officials said the blaze at Camp Creek Road near Jarbo Gap in Butte County, which had been burning since November 8th, is now 100% contained and had burned across 153,000 acres, destroying 13,972 homes, 528 commercial buildings, and 4,293 other unidentified structures. The nation's deadliest wildfire in the past century has killed so far 84 people, and more than 560 are still unaccounted for. Whenever you have accounted for numbers like this, you've got to bear in mind that these things are also semi-verified. In other words, there could be multiple reports of the same person missing, but each report would be considered an individual person. So with that said, we don't know if that number is as high as it is, but undoubtedly, considering the fact that it is in the neighborhood of about 500 people, I feared that the death toll there is going to get up around at least 100 people. Crews resumed work and by the way, a good portion of the reason that the storm was contained was because of some heavy rains in the area for several days. But as the rain cleared out of the town, a devastated town, Paradise, some were looking through destroyed neighborhoods for a second time as these people remained unaccounted for and in these ash piles that were once their homes and their surrounding properties. So it's a very, very, very grim scene. Flames ignited, as you know, around the 8th day of November and quickly spread across 240 square miles. So we are going to continue to monitor that, although this is going to be one of these stories that just takes weeks, if not months, to completely flesh out. Got several other stories of the day that we're going to be covering. However, we got Tolly calling in on line one that wants to make reference back to the shooting from this past weekend, and we welcome Tolly into this edition of the Michael Hart Show on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. Hello, Tolly. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. And, I'm sad because this is now hitting home locally on a topic that I've spoken out about for years. And it's not a popular topic to talk about. But, and I'll say this, and I'm only speaking for myself personally, but in general, police officers are running hot. They're running scared. They've been told they've been fighting a drug war, emphasis on the word war, for 45 years. And when they believe themselves to be engaged in a domestic war, well, what do you do in war? You shoot first and ask questions later. I respect law enforcement. My grandfather served as mayor. He was one of the state's longest-serving mayors in all of its history. My family comes from a public service background. I've, engaged in civil public service. The problem, though, is that a lot of the police officers, although they're Republicans and conservatives, they still have an "you shouldn't have guns, we should have guns" mentality. And I know some chief of police in some large cities that I had Sunday school classes with when I lived there that had the exact same view. They're very conservative morally and politically, but something about putting on a badge makes them think they have extra rights, extra rights. And putting on a badge does not give you extra rights. The true sovereign citizens that they complain about are usually police officers. They're the ones that usually think, well, they have extra rights. They're above the law. They are the law. That's not how God intended it, and that's not how our founding fathers intended it. We have the no quartering in our Bill of Rights for a reason. The idea that we shouldn't have to live amongst soldiers. That was part of our original Bill of Rights. So it's an important understanding that police officers need to be very carefully trained to respect your rights, and then that includes your right to carry a weapon for your own personal defense. What I think, and I predicted this, and I hate to say it like that, but I've seen it so often happen across our nation. So when I see news stories, that's the filter it goes through my mind. I predicted that, one, some of the people shot were probably shot by the police officers as bystanders, and two, I figured that the fleeing suspect wasn't given an opportunity to actually surrender or anything like that. And I think you'll see it's probably going to pan out that the cop shot a guy he saw with a gun. The gun was probably not held in any threatening manner. The police will usually do this. Keep in mind that police departments, unlike your average black citizen living in Jefferson County with not a lot of money, the police departments hire very expensive and well-paid publicists, people to represent themselves to the media. You don't get that these just average folks living and just trying to make their living. They don't have the chance to best represent themselves in the media. So the police will haul around and say, well, we got to protect the integrity of the investigation. They always do this. But eventually the video of that will come out. There'll be surveillance video from the mall. There'll be cell phone video from people running down the mall. Something will come out, and it will show that the person who was shot and killed by the police did not have the gun wielded in a threatening manner. But the reports from the cops are always going to say, well, he was wielding the gun and brandishing his weapon in a threatening manner. The officer feared for his lives, the lives of others, and he shot him. But time and time and time again, you see that's not the case. And like you were kind of hitting at, and we need, I look forward to hearing what Mr. Wass says about this, but we live in a society that should protect our right to carry a weapon to defend ourselves. So police officers need to be trained better. Most of the guys applying for police departments today
Tally, I don't disagree with that, but there's also been the debate about whether or not people need to be trained better, because the moment you pull a weapon for whatever the reason, you have an enormous amount of responsibility. And then you add into, the pressure cooker environment of all the other people around not knowing, who the good guy is. And that's the reason Dan named his book the way that he did. But there's a lot of responsibility to go around. I mean, this is a story that transcends sad. It's pathetic on every single level. And it was unfortunate. Even if the guy was involved, it was very, very unfortunate that it went to this degree. I mean, for those of us that have seen, and they're out there, pictures of this young man laying prone or, dead on the floor of this mall, even the response, even if he was a threat, at least in my opinion, seems to have been excessive. Again, as you point out, undoubtedly there's going to be video which is going to prove one way or the other. But, during the holiday season where yet again, we have another young black man that is downed by a police officer in a questionable situation. And this is something which has, I honestly don't know if it's any more frequent than it has been in the past. But there's just something about this particular event that's gnawing on me, and I can't quite figure out what it is. It's transcending the Black Lives Matter movement. It's transcending the Second Amendment. I'm almost thinking as though it's some kind of cultural hysteria that is affecting everybody in this country simultaneously, because I've got story after story after story in front of me completely unrelated to the shooting of people that seem to have been just, I don't know if they're drunk, if they're inebriated on power, or if they're inebriated on ignorance or fear or confusion or whatever. But I think what happened in Birmingham, Alabama is symptomatic of a much larger problem in this country.
I think the mainstream media is culpable as well, because, CNNs and MSNBCs want you to believe that every shooting is a mass shooting and that every gun is
I don't disagree
lethal,
with that.
So these cops are walking around with that in the back of their mind, thinking that we're waiting to stop the next mall shooter and all this, and a guy with a gun in his hand is not a criminal. He is not a threat. He is a guy with a gun in his hand. You have to train your brain to get beyond, gun, bad, shoot, kill. That they're professional police officers. If they would stop being told they're fighting a war, a domestic war, a war that goes against our Constitution, then they would get that mentality back. The heart of this, to me, is the mentality of the drug war and the idea that we have to police every aspect of our lives. We need to remind ourselves that police officers are meant to be civic servants, and that they shouldn't be running around thinking of, well, we're fighting a domestic front of a drug war, or we're fighting it's a anti-mass shooting mentality, right? A guy with a gun in his hand is not a threat. A guy wielding a gun and pointing it at people and threatening to kill them is a threat that should be stopped with lethal force. But if I have a gun in my hand to protect myself against the possibility of a shooter coming around the corner, I shouldn't have to worry about a police officer shooting to kill. The truth is, I would be worried. The truth is, if I'm carrying my weapon and if I'm in public, it's concealed probably until too late. I mean, I probably don't pull it out unless I need to fire it that instant, and you shouldn't have to wait that long. That's all I got.
I hear you.
Thanks for taking my call.
Well, I appreciate Tally so very much, and we will get Dan Ross on the program the next couple of days or two to speak to this. Going to take a real quick break. Did we use chemical weapons in the border? Yeah, well, it seems according to one Democratic representatives, chemical weapons were indeed used against the migrant caravan. Bette Midler on minimum wage, how dangerous it is to America. Camilla Harris and Cory Booker also weigh in, and then in the 8:30 segment, we are going to get into this, Thanksgiving story from the Charlie Brown Peanuts comics. You're listening to The Heart of America. This is Michael Hart. Stick around. We're coming right back.
Does your home have a water problem? Drainage around your home can cause all kinds of headaches. Disease-causing mold, cracks in walls, foundation failure, even roof leaks. At Alabama Water Management, we know that problems can often be fixed from where the water is coming from, outside. Our approach is less invasive and less expensive. So, before you spend thousands on a potentially unnecessary waterproofing system, call Alabama Water Management for a free evaluation. Alabama Water Management. Don't waterproof, water prevent.
Find Alabama Water Management on Facebook or on their website at ALAH2O.com. The Land Report, the magazine for the American landowner, is a proud supporter of the Michael Hart Show. Currently, they're offering an exclusive subscription price for listeners of the Michael Hart Show. So click on the subscribe button on landreport.com and enter the code HARTSHOW at checkout and receive a 1-year discount on America's #1 land magazine. You'll get a full year of the Land Report, which normally goes for $59, for only $15. That's a 75% savings off the cover price. Again, that's promo code HARTSHOW at checkout of thelandreport.com, and make sure to check out The Land Report on Facebook if you love land.
None shall pass.
What?
None shall pass.
I command you, as King of the Britons, to stand aside.
I move for
The Michael Hart Show.
You make me sad.
Schatz, a Democrat from Hawaii, tweeted yesterday that the use of tear gas against Central American migrants who attempted to enter the U.S. illegally may have been a violation of international agreements governing the use, oh my gosh, of chemical weapons. Yeah, before he had backtracked. The Associated Press, reported U.S. agents shot several rounds of tear gas after migrants tried to penetrate several points along the border at the San Ysidro border crossing between Tijuana and California. Migrants sought to squeeze through gaps in the wire, climb over fences, and peel back the metal sheeting to enter. In response to the reports, Schatz tweeted, "Tear gas across the border against unarmed families is a new low." Approximately 45 minutes later, he tweeted, "Who gave the order? Did it implement or contravene policy?" And then he tweeted again, all in caps, "Who gave the order?" Da-da-da-da. And, you know, and maybe this harkens back to the previous call. And just the seeming hysteria in this country. So now we have these Border Patrol agents using tear gas against migrants, but the great unwashed out there are tweeting, and the great unwashed out there are reading that it was chemical weapons. Yeah. And then there just was a complete backlash of response tweets. The tweet was posted for just a few moments before it was deleted and replaced by a softened version. Anyone uncomfortable with spraying tear gas on children is welcome to join the coalition of the moral and the sane. We can argue about other stuff when we've got our country back. So it was just spraying tear gas on children. Because it was the children that were screaming, that were clamoring to get through the wall. In an exchange with opinion writer Stephen Miller, Schatz admitted that, quote, "I went ahead and deleted the one about chemical weapons because I just don't know enough about what happened." Hello? Are you kidding me? Yeah, you're damn right you don't know what you're talking about. I don't know enough about what happened. And then he asked Miller, "Does this not strike you as excessive?" Yeah. So now you've got senators tweeting. I'm telling you, folks, I know that a lot of you are actually listening to us on Twitter, but good grief, I'm tired of Twitter. It seems to have created this license for ignorance. And, you know, it's hard to kind of bust on that too terribly much because, you know, this program is now morphed into being an online program. But we're broadcasting out, going long form. We're not restricted to 280 characters. So we have this opportunity to flesh out our thoughts. Good grief. A lot of folks listening to us online as well. Kitty Rochester letting me know that I have the book. Thank you, Michael. Great book, fun book, informative book. Thank you so much for that, Kitty. Lee Hilbert says it starts with paying police officers a decent salary. Jerry Lynn says she's at a Trump rally with ton buses ready to load. Big Dave, John, Laura Linker, Jody all say good morning. Oh, and Lori says good morning. Good morning to each and every one of you. And you know, I'm going to get into the book here in just a moment because it's really something. Matter of fact, we're going to do this in the 8:30 segment. And it's something that was not in the original book, but it's going to make it into the second one. Because talking about some of the just blatant ignorance of the world around us over the course of the Thanksgiving weekend, a lot of people came out, again, in that blisteringly high IQ environment of social media and really just lambasted Charles Schultz for the depiction in Charlie Brown's Thanksgiving of a young black boy sitting, according to them, ostracized, alone to one side of the table. And as is always the case, there is more to the story. I spent the better part of yesterday afternoon, I guess, researching the contributions of Schultz. And the reason I did that was because in the book Unknown America, which is for sale right now at theunknownamerica.com, and guess what? I'm not charging any taxes. Maybe I should. Anyway, in the book Unknown America, I get into a thing called, there's one entry called Subliminal Salvation. And it talks about a Charlie Brown's Christmas and how Charles Schultz was sending a very subliminal message to the readers of the Peanuts comic strip about his faith. The guy was a devout Christian, and he was uncomfortable in a lot of senses with being some kind of cultural warrior. But he did attempt, and he listened to people. And again, as I have said so many times at once, my eyeballs want to pop out of my head while bleeding, rolling down the stairs, out into the driveway, across the street, and down into the sewer, because there are too many people in the world that draw these conclusions about things. And, you know, you probably heard the word assume. And in like a motivational speakers will use the word assume as though it's an acronym. You know, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, which spells assume. And you really oftentimes do make an ass of yourself on social media. And again, as I have preached for over a decade, there's a lot of history in the past. And the past does matter. Our history does matter. Facts, truth, context of words and times matter. That's why you look at the story of Charles Schultz, and then you look at the Constitution. What? That's a hell of a segue. But it's true, because the context matters. The context of what was happening in our culture and our society at the time matters. And when we come back on the other side, I'm going to run through the subliminal salvation story out of the book Unknown America as I set up exactly what has taken place here with the Thanksgiving story, because it's interesting to note the contributions that this particular man made to society and to culture. But if you don't have the context, again, of what he was trying to do, what was going on in society, and how he interacted, because guess what? Never mind. I'll save it to the other side. I don't even want to give you any more of a teaser, because the reality of it is, anybody that thinks that Charles Schultz was being racially insensitive when it comes to a Charlie Brown's Thanksgiving, man, are you dumb. Hey, stick around. We're coming right back.
Is your home's crawl space making your... Let Alabama Water Management inspect your crawl space today. A wet, moldy crawl space can cause serious foundation problems. They are breeding grounds for disgusting odors, polluted air, potentially harmful allergens, and volatile organic compounds that can actually make breathing difficult and the air in your home very unhealthy. Don't take chances with your family's health. If your home has a crawl space, call Alabama Water Management today for a no-cost, no-obligation crawl space inspection.
Find Alabama Water Management on Facebook or on their website at ALAH2O.com. If you're a fan of The Michael Hart Show and are enjoying the daily commentary, interviews, and audio shorts, then please consider supporting the program financially. Creating a daily talk program takes a great deal of time and money. Although corporate sponsors are always welcome, the real support comes from people like you, the regular listeners. So if you support the Christian conservative message and values we share on this program and would like to help, please go to our website, michaelhartshow.com, and click on the orange Patreon button at the top of the page. For less than $7 a month, you can help us keep going while we spread our faith-based conservative views worldwide. So if you support our views, please consider supporting the program. Just go to www.michaelhartshow.com and click on the orange Patreon button, and thanks for your support and for listening. The Land Report, the magazine for the American landowner, is a proud supporter of the Michael Hart Show. Currently, they're offering an exclusive subscription price for listeners of the Michael Hart Show. So click on the subscribe button on landreport.com and enter the code HARTSHOW at checkout and receive a 1-year discount on America's #1 land magazine. You'll get a full year of the Land Report, which normally goes for $59, for only $15. That's a 75% savings off the cover price. Again, that's promo code HARTSHOW at checkout of thelandreport.com, and make sure to check out The Land Report on Facebook if you love land. Welcome back. Let's take a call or two, and then we're going to do this Charlie Brown Thanksgiving thing, and not just setting the records straight for Charles Schultz, but also to demonstrate how people just don't do their due diligence. They don't do any research. They take everything at face value, and everything is racist, bigoted, misogynistic. Tear gas equals chemical weapons, and the whole world seems to be on fire. And I think it's on fire just of the number of people out there that are completely divorced from reality. So let's take a call or two, and then we're going to go long form with this stuff. And by the way, it's probably going to happen sometime this week. We're going to take another podcast up under Heart of America, and it's going to be The Unknown America, and it's going to cover stuff just like this. It's not just going to be me reading excerpts from a book, because if you have a copy of Unknown America, you are currently in possession of about 10% of what I had in my possession. I have got just files after files after files of stuff that I'm going to be releasing in number 2, number 3, and a children's version of the book. And this story may very well make the children's version of the book. Now, this is not necessarily a myth that we're going to be dispelling, but it is very insightful into what was going on in this country, but also it's going to be demonstrative of how people get things so incredibly wrong just because they don't have a clue in the world what they're talking about. Phones are 929-477-3761, and let's go ahead and talk to Big Dave. How are you, my brother?
Hey, brother, what's going on? Just sitting here listening to the #1 podcast in the mornings. How are you?
Oh, yeah, that's so sweet of you to say.
I got a question. The stuff that happened at the Hoover Mall, at the Galleria. One of the things that I'd like for you to ask Dan, and maybe even get a couple of guys on from Bama Carey, what are you supposed to do when something like that happens? I mean, because like my nephew and my niece were there. They went into a store. He put the people behind the counter. He drew his gun and stood in front of the counter. What should you look for? What should you think about? What should you do in that type of atmosphere?
Well, that's one of the reasons I want to get Dan on the air. And Dan, wrote the book, Dave, about our constitutional rights. But as you recall, some years ago, we were involved with the Situational Security Summit in North Birmingham, and we talked about things just like this. And somebody else we probably need to speak to on this issue is someone such as Greg Hopkins, the author of the book, A Time to Kill. Because in any kind of firearms defense class like that, typically you are going to only use as much force as deemed necessary to neutralize a situation. Perhaps drawing your weapon and taking cover would be the way to go, as opposed to immediately employing the use of deadly force. And so my issue is here, and you and I have talked about this before. My issue is here you have a mall where you have basically two lanes of people going two different directions in both lanes, and potentially having people on either side of that mall drawing down on a threat, and all of a sudden now you're in a crossfire situation. So,
right.
even go ahead.
Even in, at the radio station, we all talked about who would go first because we had three halls, one hall and a T, that if someone was to come in, who went first?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a valid question, and it's something that, we need to get maybe a firearms trainer. As a matter of fact, there's a young lady that I know that you've met as well by the name of Beth Alcazar. Maybe I'll reach out to Beth as well, and we'll get 3 or 4 people on the program and kind of hash this out, because, what went down in the mall in Birmingham, that could have been a lot worse than it turned out to be. And I'm saying a lot worse because there was the actual shooting, the response by law enforcement. That could have easily created a pressure cooker situation for everybody there.
But, I've never been in that kind of situation, and I know you haven't either. But, it's good to think about what you should do in a situation like that, because I would have done exactly what my nephew did. I would have put my wife and my kids behind the counter, and I would have stood in front of the counter, and I'd have been, drawn and ready to go in case the threat came in.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, that's a very, very, very good suggestion. I'm going to reach out to Hopkins and Beth today, as well as Dan, see if I can't get all 3 of these guys on the program. We might have to do it on Wednesday, but I think we need to dedicate perhaps an entire hour to just talking about not just what happened, but our response to it. Because, again, and for those that might be listening to us, because we're on the internet, we're everywhere now, that don't understand, you have a mall shooting where you have, some guy gets into a fight, draws a weapon, and all of a sudden now you got a cop drawing down on somebody else who draws a weapon. That cop theoretically could have shot anybody who had a weapon out that day. And
right.
that's
so do you leave it holstered? I wouldn't want to, because I'd be afraid. I want to have, that 2 seconds of me drawing my gun, could be the difference of me being dead or alive.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That's a good,
very
good suggestion, Dave. Dave, I appreciate
Have a
the
good
call.
one, brother. I love it.
Thank you so very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Big Dave Richardson, everybody, and that's a wonderful, wonderful suggestion. I'll reach out, and we'll go long form with this in the next few days, because I think it's really worth people to understand. I mean, I understand we have a Second Amendment right to carry. I understand we have a right to defend ourselves. But at the end of the day, if we're going to demand a hierarchy of training from our law enforcement officers, well, where do we fall in that? If you're going to, you practice in your car. I mean, hell, we practice casting a fishing rod. And I think there's too many people out there that don't get to the lane. But it's one thing to be accurate in your shot. It's something else entirely to know when to shoot. And we need to break that down as well. So very good suggestion from our friend Big Dave, and we'll get on top of that. All right, we are post-Thanksgiving, coming up into the Christmas holiday season. Let me give you a little bit of texture about Charles Schulz, just so we can break this story down. And this is not going to be a Peanuts comic strip program, but I do want to read this to you. Charles Schulz, Charlie Brown's Christmas, is a holiday classic spanning 5 decades. But did you know it contains subtle yet very significant religious symbolism? Subliminal symbolism that went pretty much unnoticed by most people for decades. During the scene where the gang is practicing for the Christmas play, Charlie Brown asked the question, isn't there anyone that knows what Christmas is all about? At this point, Linus responds with, sure, Charlie Brown, I can tell you what Christmas is all about. And then he goes on to recite a verse from the Bible, which is Luke 2, verses 18 through 14, which reads, and there in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night, and lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were so afraid. And the angel of the Lord said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be for all people. For unto you in this day is born in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And he shall be a sign unto you. Ye shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill towards men. At the exact point in the cartoon where Linus says, Fear not, remember, fear not, for behold, he drops his security blanket, which he has rarely seen not clinging to throughout the decades-long series. It has been thought by many that Schultz was reminding us of the clear message from the Gospels that when we fear not and put our trust in the Lord Jesus Christ, we can shed whatever security blanket we ourselves cling to. Another very poignant scene is at the conclusion of the program when Linus comforts the spindly and wilting tree that Charlie Brown has brought by wrapping his blanket around the tree's base as he proclaims, I never thought it was a bad little tree. It just needs a little bit of love. And the tree immediately stands strong, upright, and shimmering. So was Charles Schultz trying to slide one by? Most people, especially those that know him, say probably not. The message seems quite clear. Schultz was not necessarily famous for his subliminal messages, but they were certainly not something which was beneath him. He understood the significance of his platform. Now, this past Thanksgiving, critics slamming ABC's at Charlie Brown's Thanksgiving for seating its only black character, Franklin, alone on one side of the holiday table in a rickety old lawn chair. Meanwhile, the white folk, Peppermint Patty, Charlie Brown, Sally, and even Snoopy, were all seated across from him in real chairs as they feasted. This, according to users on Twitter. The special, which debuted in 1973, aired again this past Wednesday, prompting social media outrage over the gang's highly unwoke picnic table arrangement. One Twitter user asking, why is Franklin and Charlie Brown's Thanksgiving sitting all by himself at the table? Man, things I did not notice as a child. Others said, good grief, over a seating that would have thrilled Alabama Governor George Wallace, the deceased George Wallace, for those of you not up to speed on it. Not watching Charlie Brown Thanksgiving anymore until they sit some people on the same side of the table as Franklin, another critic tweeted, along with two Black Power-style fist emojis. And it goes on and on and on that Charles Schultz is, in fact, a racist based upon Charlie Brown's Thanksgiving. Now, there's multiple things to consider here. Number one is in the depiction of the table, as would have been the cultural norm at the time. Charlie Brown is sitting next to his sister, Peppermint Patty, who was, presumably by some perhaps his love interest outside, the redheaded little girl, and his dog. So Charlie Brown is essentially sitting with what he would have considered to be his family. Franklin was not known to have parents, particularly in the early days of the Strip. But that notwithstanding, people don't realize that there was a lot that went into the creation of the character of Franklin by Charles Schultz. And guess what? How many people know that he consulted with members of the black community? I actually have in my possession letters that were written by people within that community to Charles Schultz and his response as they were figuring out collectively the best way to integrate the Strip. Franklin is a very strong student. He's a wonderful athlete. He's a supportive friend, just a solid, good soul. And according to Schultz himself and many other historians of the Strip, he is the most mentally balanced and secure. In other words, Franklin is a very positive characterization of all things that are good in people. It revealed Charles Schultz's struggle to diversify the strip in a way that he felt was authentic. Now, the year of Franklin's debut was 1968. It was a year fraught with all types of problems in this country. The North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong had launched the Tet Offensive on January 30th. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in April. Riots swept across the nation in the immediate aftermath. America was on fire. Then, on April 15th, a school teacher out of California by the name of Harriet Glickman wrote a letter to Schultz reflecting on what she could do to stem the hate. Remember, this is in the 1960s, y'all, but I thought we were so hateful now. That's what happens when you don't stay up to speed on your history. Been there before. The country's falling apart, divided over war, left versus right. Where have we heard that before? So anyway, she decides she's going to write a letter to Charles Schultz because she knows the impact that Charles Schultz could potentially have. She suggested that Schultz should add a black character to the Peanuts roster, suggesting it could happen with a minimum of impact. She knew it would cause shockwaves from Schultz's readers, but felt that Schultz had a stature and reputation which can withstand a great deal. More tellingly, she hoped the result would be more than just one black child in the strip. The letter itself, in her words, and I mean, I've got the printed letter. It occurred to me that the introduction, and you got to bear in mind the times, and I'm going to read it just the way it's written. The introduction of Negro children into the group of Schultz characters could happen with a minimum of impact. The gentleness of the kids, even Lucy, is a perfect setting. The baseball games, kite flying, yes, even the psychiatric services, Coombe lemonade stand would accommodate the idea smoothly. Sitting alone in California suburbia makes it seem all too easy and logical. I'm sure, and one doesn't make radical changes in so important an institution without a lot of shockwaves from syndicates, clients, etc. You have, however, a stature and reputation which can withstand a great deal. Lastly, should you consider the suggestion, I hope that the result will be more than one black child, and let them be as adorable as the others, but please allow them a Lucy. In her hope for a Lucy, Glickman did not wish for a black child to be in the background. She wanted Schultz to create a black character who could be considered an equal part of the group. Schultz writes back, expressing his desire to accommodate her request, but also citing some concerns. He felt that he and other white cartoonists were afraid that they would be looking like they were patronizing black readers. In his letter to Glickman, thank you very much for your kind letter. I appreciate your suggestion about introducing a Negro child into the comic strip, but I am faced with the same problems that other cartoonists are who wish to comply with your suggestion. We would all like very much to be able to do this, but each of us is afraid that it would look like we are patronizing our Negro friends. I don't know what the solution is. Rather than speaking on behalf of the black community, Glickman, back in California, goes out and starts asking black people for their input on the issue. In the meantime, Schultz continues to express his concerns via letters back to Glickman. He went on to write, I will be very anxious to hear what your friends think of my reasons for not including a Negro character in the strip at this time. But the more I think of the problem, the more I'm convinced that it would be wrong for me to do so. I would be very happy to try, but I am sure that it would receive the sort of criticism that would make it appear as if I was doing this in a very condescending manner. Then enters a guy by the name of Kenneth Kelly. Now, Kelly is one of the black researchers, if you will, that Glickman was interviewing over the issue. So now Kelly writes to Schultz, and by the way, Kelly was a space engineer. There's a lot of similarities between Kelly and his intellect and that of Franklin. Just kind of pointing that out there. He actually worked on the Surveyor lunar vehicle, and he would go on to become a discrimination rights activist. So anyway, the Kenneth Kelly letter arrives, and he, as the father of two boys, here is the letter. We have a situation in America in which racial enmity is constantly portrayed. The inclusion of a Negro supernumerary in some of the group's scenes in Peanuts would do two important things. Firstly, it would ease my problem of having my kids seeing themselves pictured in the overall American scene. Secondly, it would suggest racial amity, in a casual day-to-day sense. He goes on to write, I deliberately suggest a supernumerary role for a Negro character. The inclusion of a Negro in your occasional group scenes would quietly and unobtrusively set the stage for a principled character at a later date, should the basis for such a principle develop. This letter convinced Schultz to proceed, and he wrote Glickman one more time, telling her to check the funny pages at the end of July. Franklin then debuted on July 31st, 1968, at the request of a group of African Americans that made the case that they would not see it as patronizing, and they felt that it was important. He appeared in 3 consecutive strips, all of which established his character in broad strokes. Schultz even going so far as avoiding looking like he was patronizing by addressing some of the racial undertones implicitly and indirectly. There's a scene where one particular strip where Franklin is practicing to be a hockey player, and Peppermint Patty points out that there were no black hockey players. So Schultz tries to take these things on, and quite frankly, sometimes awkwardly. But he was going to try to take them on. Franklin brought fresh perspective, and for one of the first time in the strip's history, Charlie Brown, and this is an interesting observation, was judged on his first impressions. You see, other Peanuts characters were introduced to Charlie Brown through mutual friends. Frida, for example, through Linus, Peppermint Patty, through Roy, etc. But Franklin is a total stranger. He's just a chance acquaintance, and able to judge Charlie Brown and his individual beliefs based on a lack of knowledge or the endorsement of a friend. Franklin ultimately joined the cast as a character, usually playing the foil to other characters and their problems. He didn't live in the Peanut universe neighborhood. He lived across town with Peppermint Patty, Marcy, and Roy, which affected the number of times he could interact with Charlie Brown. But he did, and this is also an interesting observation, and these are observations from Peanuts historians I'm sharing with you. He sat in front of Peppermint Patty at school, which, according to most historians, was another day-to-day endorsement by Schultz of integration. But the Twitter sphere, they're not pointing that out. Franklin's cultural significance was also self-evident simply by being. Schultz recalled in an interview with a guy by the name of Michael Barrier. Now, this is in the year 1988. Another editor once protested when Franklin was sitting in the same row of school desk with Peppermint Patty and said, and this is, by the way, Schultz, "We have enough trouble here in the South without you showing the kids together in school." Schultz responds, "But I never paid any attention to those things. And I remember telling United Features president Larry Ruttman at the time about Franklin, and he wanted me to change it. We talked about it for a long time on the phone, and I finally sighed and said, 'Well, Larry, let me put this way. Either you print it the way I draw it, or I quit.'" How's that? Now, bear in mind, this is United Features Syndicate. Look at your comics in your newspaper, if you still get one, and you'll see that most of the comic strips are circulated by United King Features. Schultz was essentially putting his entire career on the line by defending the inclusion of Franklin to make a cultural statement on race in this country in the 1970s. He did, however, go on to say, "I've never done much with Franklin because I don't do race things. I'm not an expert on race. I don't know what it's like to grow up as a little black boy, and I don't think you should draw things unless you really understand them, unless you're just there to stir things up and try not to teach people about different things. I'm not in this business to instruct. I'm in it to be funny." Now and then I may instruct a few things, but I'm not here to grind axes. And then he went on to tell the president of King United Features, again, that he would be leaving. Franklin was a groundbreaker in his time, a cartoon character that was black in a cartoon full of white faces, in a strip drawn by a white cartoonist, and Schultz knew that every racist, anti-integration editor in the world would be searching for a reason to reject the character out of hand. But he stood his ground nonetheless because he understood the importance of inclusion. He wanted to make the point that it could happen within our schools and in our society, and he was going to completely upend his own career in defense of that. He had a history all through the Peanuts run, going all the way back to a Charlie Brown's Christmas, where he understood the importance of culture, of fairness. He responded. He knew, because you got to bear in mind at the time, culturally speaking, how it would have been dangerous for his career. I mean, essentially, the boss of his distribution coming to him and saying, either get the character out or you no longer get to do this for a living. Because in the late 60s and 70s, particularly in the Deep South, it could have been quite detrimental. And even leaving Franklin in could have all but ruined his career. But he knew it was the right thing to do. And when several people within the black community made the point that they would support his decision, it was the better angels of his nature that he listened to and not his own pocketbook or wallet. But no, people without the facts, without the knowledge, not willing to do the due diligence, take a cartoon of a bunch of kids sitting around a Thanksgiving table as some form of proof of segregation in the animated world. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we've got senators screaming about tear gas as chemical weapons, while we've got so many people on the left screaming racism and bigotry and misogyny at every corner. That's why we have hashtag this matters, me too, I don't care, and everybody just in this general sense of pissed off. Because they don't get to the facts. They don't get to reality. It's why I wrote the book. It's why I'm going to continue to write the book. It's why I'm going to start the podcast, because these things are important, because by God, the truth matters. And I am sick and tired of people treading all over it for some kind of ginned up, fanatical, intellectual malaise that has got the condiment of oppression and hatred slathered all over it for the purposes of advancing some kind of warped agenda. We're going to take a quick break, come back on the other side. You're listening to The Michael Hart Show. The Land Report, the magazine for the American landowner, is a proud supporter of the Michael Hart Show. Currently, they're offering an exclusive subscription price for listeners of the Michael Hart Show. So click on the subscribe button on landreport.com and enter the code HARTSHOW at checkout and receive a 1-year discount on America's #1 land magazine. You'll get a full year of the Land Report, which normally goes for $59, for only $15. That's a 75% savings off the cover price. Again, that's promo code HARTSHOW at checkout of thelandreport.com, and make sure to check out The Land Report on Facebook if you love land.
Is your home's crawl space making your... Let Alabama Water Management inspect your crawl space today. A wet, moldy crawl space can cause serious foundation problems. They are breeding grounds for disgusting odors, polluted air, potentially harmful allergens, and volatile organic compounds that can actually make breathing difficult and the air in your home very unhealthy. Don't take chances with your family's health. If your home has a crawl space, call Alabama Water Management today for a no-cost, no-obligation crawl space inspection.
Find Alabama Water Management on Facebook or on their website at ALAH2O.com.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you're a fan of The Michael Hart Show and are enjoying the daily commentary, interviews, and audio shorts, then please consider supporting the program financially. Creating a daily talk program takes a great deal of time and money. Although corporate sponsors are always welcome, the real support comes from people like you, the regular listeners. So if you support the Christian conservative message and values we share on this program and would like to help, please go to our website, michaelhartshow.com, and click on the orange Patreon button at the top of the page. For less than $7 a month, you can help us keep going while we spread our faith-based conservative views worldwide. So if you support our views, please consider supporting the program. Just go to www.michaelhartshow.com and click on the orange Patreon button, and thanks for your support and for listening. Hey, welcome back. 3 minutes past the hour. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of the other stories of ignorance here on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. And these are economic stories. And this just kind of goes to demonstrate exactly what the left thinks and how they are, how they pander. Oh, my goodness, Bette Midler. Oh, my God, it's a Twitter story. Damn, I got to read these things up front before I start reporting on another Twitter story. Once again, gets into the weeds of politics. This time, she blames low minimum wage for the intense scenes at shopping venues on Black Friday. Just one day after many Americans took to stores to reap the benefits of the massive sales that acts as the unofficial opening to the holiday season, Midler gets on Twitter where she implied that the sometimes dangerous shopping conditions occur because average Americans find the low cost of these items more of a necessity than a benefit. She tweets, and how was your, oh, by the way, all in caps, how is your Black Friday? No injuries, I hope. It's incredible that we have to fight over stuff. If there were, all in caps, decent minimum wage, or if workers were treated fairly and got a tiny portion of the kinds of salaries and bonuses CEOs pay themselves, we wouldn't. Now, throughout the last several years of my life, I've made a pretty decent living, certainly above minimum wage. And I'm looking for a bargain wherever I can find one. Yesterday, me and the love of my life decided to go shopping for a Christmas tree. And this year we wanted a big one. And we drove around our town of Birmingham, Alabama. And we found a big lot. Not big lots, but a big tree lot. Found a couple trees that we liked. We found one that we really liked, actually. I walked up to the guy because they weren't marked with the price and said, hey, excuse me, how much for this one? $110. I'm like, Yeah, right. Okay, my first car cost about twice that much. So we looked at a few other ones, and they were all $90, $100, $110. One of them was 140 something. Now I got $140 in my pocket, but for a tree, I think not. We had passed this small little Boy Scout tree sale on the way to the bigger. It was a big box tree lot. Okay. Anyway, turned around, went back to the Boy Scouts. I felt better. They were both Boy Scouts tree lots, but the other one was a much smaller troop. Went back there, found the 10-foot tree, got it for $70. So I saved myself $40 because I'm always looking for a bargain. And the interesting thing about it is most people that have any amount of money in their pocket tend to be quite frugal. I had a great uncle that was extremely wealthy, that was extremely frugal. Frugality in some people's vision is a virtue, unless you're Bette Midler, because you got to get yourself a high-paying job so you don't have to go out on Black Friday. Now, we opened up the program today telling you about the just horrible story of this young man that was accidentally killed. I'm going to stay with accidentally till I know better. At a big mall in Birmingham, Alabama. This mall happens to be in one of the most affluent parts of the entire state. But no, people are so poor, they have to go to the overpriced affluent mall on Black Friday. The reply thread to this tweet is pretty much split, with some users chastising Midler for being an ill-informed opinion, having an ill-informed opinion and claiming hypocrisy of making as much as a celebrity. Others, meanwhile, agree with the assessment and defend her for her charity work. Minimum wage. If it was only $12 or $13, then we wouldn't have to go out on Black Friday. You wouldn't be worried about, say, there used to be a, it was J.P. Morgan, who famously said, if you have to ask how much it cost, then you can't afford it. That's ridiculous. Because that would mean that none of us can afford anything. Of course you want to know how much it costs to operate it, to store it, to insure it, to repair it. But there are people in this world that are so financially disconnected from reality that they are going to come up with idiotic scenarios. And staying with the theme of idiotic scenarios, and this one should surprise you not. Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, they are advancing the idea of basic income for all, but some are claiming that if they were to be successful, it would remove the incentive to work. Both Booker and Harris, who are said to be eyeing the 2020 presidential nomination, oh, by the way, good luck with that, recently announced so-called basic income plans for America's lower-income families because they're having a shop on Black Friday. I know, it's just a liberal publication, meanwhile, says that neither plan goes far enough to aid families, and the government should instead just start writing them checks. Over the course of the last couple of weeks while doing this program, I have debated with my consultant about whether or not we need to introduce a video component to this program. I think it's time, because I just cannot even begin to effectualize a visual of my current eye rolling. Just start writing them checks. I mean, we print our own money. I mean, don't we? You see, that's the view of the left. You just go, if you've ever been to the U.S. Treasury, there's pallets and pallets of dollar bills. And 20s and 100s and 50s. Oh, my. So all we do is go get a whole bunch of that money and start writing some checks. Somebody give me a check. I need a check. The Heritage Foundation, however, has argued that such plans tend to fail, in part because they tend to remove the incentive to work. Who cares if you're working? I'm getting a check. Get lost. In October, Camilla unveiled her LIFT, all in caps, an acronym, LIFT, the Middle Class Act. It would provide a tax credit of up to $6,000 a year to families earning less than $100,000 a year. Because, if you're making $100,000 a year, you have to shop on Black Friday. Or maybe you waited because you're like really super unbelievably lazy and you're going to shop today on Cyber Monday so you can pay higher taxes in most stores or most states across the nation. Little tongue-in-cheek there. But a $6,000 credit for families earning less than $100,000 a year and $3,000 for those earning less than $50,000. She went on to say that middle-class families deserve to know that one unexpected cost won't lead to a financial emergency. Now, that was also in a tweet. Because you know something? Until you tweet it, it didn't really happen. No, trust me. That's why we're on Twitter. The Lift the Middle Class Act that I introduced would help address the rising cost of housing, tuition, child care, and more. But the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center estimated earlier this month that Harris's plan would add $2.8 trillion to the federal deficit over its first decade and another $3.4 billion over its second. This, according to the Washington Post. Harris has proposed paying for her plan by canceling the Republican Party's tax cuts and charging a new tax on banks and other financial institutions. Now, does this jackaloon know that if we start charging new taxes on banks, that the banks have had a historical tendency towards burdening us with new fees? Y'all do remember a time, hopefully you do, when you could walk into any old bank and cash your paycheck, even if you didn't have an account there, as long as that check was drawn on that bank. But now that same bank will charge you a fee if you are a non-account holder. Why is that? Because they're trying to offset some of their fee losses put on them by the federal government. But let's not pay any attention to that. Meanwhile, Cory Booker proposed last month the creation of, quote, opportunity accounts. For who? You know who. The children. According to Booker, the opportunity account would grow to about $46,000 per child by the time they turn 18. This, according to the Business Insider. Booker said of the plan today, nearly 1 in 3 American families have zero to negative wealth, and it's hard to get ahead if you begin life behind the starting line. Although I won't disagree with that statement, the accumulation of wealth is typically put on the individual to accumulate, is it not? And if, in fact, the federal government was to bestow you with these said monies, would you consider that wealth? So be a Democrat. I mean, I don't know why they just don't change their entire campaign strategy to this. Be a Democrat, get a check. Give me that check. Be a Democrat, get a check. It's kind of a take on the be Catholic, be happy stinger that we use on the program. Which, by the way, for those of you that are new to the program, we're not telling you to be Catholic. That was just one of our previous callers that was delivering a funny, and we thought it was kind of comical. But I think I might have to change that. Be a Democrat, get yourself a check. Maybe I'll get somebody like Chris Rock to voice that for me. But the liberal publication The Nation claims both wealth distribution plans will fall short. Going on to say that Harris's plan suffers from two problems. First is who she leaves out. By matching only the income that poor families earn from work, it omits those that don't earn anything, which, by the way, is liberal speak for it omits those that don't work. It omits those that don't earn it. Listen to that line. The Get a Check program only applies to people that are working under the Kamala Harris plan. The Nation says it omits those that don't earn anything. So now we are being called on to provide basic sustenance to people that don't work because in some cases, many cases, oftentimes cases, they are too lazy to work. The second problem with the Harris plan, she still relies on giving money to families through the tax code. An opaque and complicated way of doing it. Okay, I need to reset my my IQ because I think I just expended 1 or 2 points that I really didn't have to spare. So we're going to take a real quick break, come back on the other side. You're listening to a very bemused and yet frustrated edition of Heart of America with Michael Hart, right here on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. Stick around. We're coming right back. The Land Report, the magazine for the American landowner, is a proud supporter of the Michael Hart Show. Currently, they're offering an exclusive subscription price for listeners of the Michael Hart Show. So click on the subscribe button on landreport.com and enter the code HARTSHOW at checkout and receive a 1-year discount on America's #1 land magazine. You'll get a full year of the Land Report, which normally goes for $59, for only $15. That's a 75% savings off the cover price. Again, that's promo code HARTSHOW at checkout of thelandreport.com, and make sure to check out the Land Report on Facebook if you love land. If you're a fan of the Michael Hart Show and are enjoying the daily commentary, interviews, and audio shorts, then please consider supporting the program financially. Creating a daily talk program takes a great deal of time and money. Although corporate sponsors are always welcome, the real support comes from people like you, the regular listeners. So if you support the Christian conservative message and values we share on this program and would like to help, please go to our website, michaelhartshow.com, and click on the orange Patreon button at the top of the page. For less than $7 a month, you can help us keep going while we spread our faith-based conservative views worldwide. So if you support our views, please consider supporting the program. Just go to www.michaelhartshow.com and click on the orange Patreon button, and thanks for your support and for listening.
It's not right versus left. It's us versus them. It's the Michael Hart Show.
The Michael Hart Show, right here on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. We're going to wrap this puppy up and make way for some other projects that we're working on, so we'll be with you another 6 or 7 minutes or so. But taking a good look at this Kamala Harris, Cory Booker kind of a duality of wealth or poverty eradication, the liberal publication The Nation hails Booker's plan for sending money straight to the people who need it, but says that it mistimes the assistance, providing it when youths reach adulthood, when most families are more economically stable. The publication suggests that both plans be set aside in favor of the Russell Sage Foundation researchers' suggestion that parents be sent at least $250 a month for each child. In other words, government raising your kids. Doesn't that almost turn every child in America into a quasi-ward of the state? A foster child, if you will? A suggestion from the Russell Sage Foundation that parents are sent $250 a month for each child. Now, this is a plan estimated to cost taxpayers about $190 billion a year. Would that not compel people to crank out more kids? Hi, go up there and get me a toddler. Yeah. It would certainly seem to me that that would be the absolute outcome. That's still less than what's been estimated for Harris's plan, according to The Nation, and less than the recent Republican tax cuts, which are likely to cost over the next 3 years. But the Heritage Foundation's Vijay Menon wrote last month the plans, similar to the recent liberal proposals, have been tried before only to fail. Menon writes that a negative income tax experiment ran in 6 states from 1968 to 80, and was documented by libertarian writer Charles Murray, author of Losing Ground. In it, Murray concluded that the effect of negative income tax on reducing work was unambiguous and wrong. Now, the years that the experiment ran was 1968 to 1980. Now, by definition, that would be the past, history, and stuff like that there. But they don't look into that. $250 per month for every child in America. Unbelievable. Getting very tight on time, but I'm going to go ahead and squeeze Clark's call in here, and then we're going to wrap this puppy up. Hey, Clark, I've got about 3 or 4 minutes.
Hey, Michael, you doing well?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Super. I'm all good, man. So why don't we just all stay home and nobody has to work, and Bette Midler can make it to where we all make her kind of money, and we can just order stuff offline?
I think it's the perfect plan. I truly do.
You know, I don't know, Michael, how anybody buys into any of this. You know, unfortunately, we have to eat our bread in the sweat of our brow. And it's just the way it is.
Right.
And, you know, for you to be able to go to the store and buy something, somebody had to grow it, somebody had to pick it, somebody had to ship it, somebody had to put it in the store. There's a lot of things that have to happen so we can go buy stuff, or somebody has to make stuff. People have to do things for our society to work. And sit at home and collect the check. I mean, you know, sit at home and collect the check doesn't make the society work.
No, it doesn't. And if everybody stays home and collects a check, who's going to make the check that can be taxed to pay everybody the check? It's the damnedest thing, Clark.
You know, you can sell this to some people, I guess, and get enough votes to get into office, but long term it doesn't work.
It's not even possible.
Refer back to Pinocchio when they all went to the island where they could play and have a good time and got turned into donkeys.
Well, you're exactly right, Clark. You are exactly. It's ignorant. You know, it's sad that there's so many ignorant people out there that would buy into this and fall for it. But it's absolutely the case, and that's how they get into office.
Same thing with a minimum wage. I mean, you know, if the government could actually set a minimum wage and it was workable to do that, then we could just make the minimum wage $200 an hour. We all work 5 hours a week, and hey, that's $1,000 a week.
Yeah, and then have a couple kids, pick up $1,000 a month, and it's all good. You're exactly right.
Exactly.
We'd be loving life, wouldn't he?
There it is. I don't know.
Yeah,
Michael,
I know.
you have fun with the rest of it. It's probably about time for you to hop anyway.
Yeah, we're getting close, Clark, because we're about to start doing some other programming on this particular network. So we're doing 90 minutes in the morning, and then come back and do another 30 to an hour in the afternoon. So we're making a few changes to hopefully educate some of these jackaloons.
What time do I pick that up?
It's going to be in the evenings. I mean, you know, it'll be archived. You can listen to it at your convenience. It'll probably be an evening broadcast, though.
Pick it up on Facebook the same as I'm doing the broadcast I'm listening to?
Yep, we'll have it there.
I'll be there. Aloha.
Thank you, Clark. Thank you so very much. All right, guys, going to wrap this thing up and get ready to do some other things here throughout the course of the night. But come on, folks, pay attention to the world around you and the news and what is happening in the past. You know, almost every story that I've gotten into today shows that you've got people out there making these comments, making these programs, making these policies, trying to advance these ideologies and agendas and programs that have already been, in a lot of cases, proven to have been failures in the past. It's not that complicated. Stop calling everybody a misogynist or a bigot or a xenophobe. Stop telling everybody you're going to give them a check if they vote for you. Come on, folks. The biggest threat, the biggest danger that we have in this country today is the fact that we have too many people that are too ignorant of the world around them, and hopefully they'll somehow find this program and allow their, how did Junior put it in the movie Platoon? Free your mind and your ass will follow. You've been listening to the Michael Hart Show. We'll be back with you tomorrow at 8.
Be Catholic!